What's up, folks? Jeff Everhart here. In this video, we'll explore how to power real-time toasts in Next.js. For most developers, toasts aren't new, but using Nock's real-time feed API, we can display toasts when actions are triggered by other users or scheduled events. In this video, we'll install toasts from shadcn UI, connect them to Nock's real-time feed events, and show how you can conditionally display toasts in the UI based on your message payload. This tutorial builds on a previous video where we implement a Notion-style feed, and you can find the link in the video description below. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start off in our code base, and I'm pretty much going to pick up where we left off in the previous video. So if you haven't watched that, check out the link for that in the video description, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to want to do to implement real-time toasts is actually install the toast component from shadcn UI. So I'll hop out to my browser and I have the toast component page open here, and we'll just go ahead and sort of run through this installation guide. So the first thing we'll do is copy this command for npm to actually add the component to our component/UI folder. And we'll do that, and you can see that it's installed these three separate components, and then we'll hop back out and look at what the rest of the implementation looks like. So it seems like we need to first import this toaster component, and we'll do that at the top of our file, right under the rest of our components. And then we'll go ahead and scroll down just to the bottom of this file. Since I have everything all in one file in this project, we'll kind of just implement that at the bottom of our tabs component. And then it looks like we also need to import this use toast hook. So I'll go ahead and copy that and scroll back up to where I'm importing the rest of my React hooks. We'll go ahead and paste that right below it. And then from there, what we'll need to do is actually extract this toast function from our use toast hook inside of our component. And so what that will allow us to do is, if we look at the implementation guide, it should allow us to call this toast function, pass in this object, and that's what will trigger our toasts. So if we look where we're going to do that, I think what we'll do is we're going to add another event handler in the next step to call that toast function. Okay, so now that we have our toasts installed and we have our use toast hook in place, let's go ahead and add an additional event handler onto the Nock feed that's going to respond to real-time events. So we'll say Nock feed on, and then we'll pass in this items.received real-time string. And then the second argument for this is going to be a callback function. And this callback function is going to pass in a couple of different properties, but what we're looking for is the items that get passed in. So these are the new items that are being passed to the feed through WebSockets as we add items to the feed in the backend. So what we can do here is, for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and console log out the value of items. So we can take a look at that, and then we'll also just go ahead and just make sure our toast is working. So we'll call this with some generic data. So we'll say new toast message for our title. And then our description is going to be just, you have a new message. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that out, and then we'll come down here and start up our development server. And then let's hop back into the browser, and we'll go ahead and just refresh our app just to make sure that that newest client-side code is loaded. And then what we can do is we can come into Nock, and I'm gonna, inside of my in-app workflow, I'm gonna go ahead and just run a test real quick to send a message, and then we should be able to come back here, and cool, we can see that our toast is working exactly as we want it to. And if we come down here and open up the browser, we can see that that items array is getting logged out. And so I think that's an important call out, that items is actually an array, because it's possible that multiple items have gotten caught up in this batch. So we could have the potential to get multiple items at one time. So let's go ahead and look at some of the stuff that we've got available here. We've got the list of activities, which are basically the things that generated this particular notification. We've got a list of actors, if there are any. And then we have some data, which is actually the message payload that we're passing through, the custom payload that we're passing through to our workflow. Then we also have this array of blocks. And so here, we can see this is the rendered HTML, and this is basically what's getting rendered out here when we display this. Okay, so cool. So let's hop back into our code and let's do a couple of things. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is inside of this event listener, I'm actually just going to copy this line, and we're going to go ahead and just make sure that we're syncing our feed appropriately here as well. So that when we get real-time events, that also updates. But what we're going to want to do is, so we'll go ahead and modify this bit a little bit. So we know that items is actually an array. So we're going to say items.forEach. So what we'll do is we'll loop through this and we'll say, the thing we're going to pass in here is item. And then for each item, this is where we're actually going to want to display a toast, right? So we're not just displaying one toast, we're displaying one for each real-time item that we receive. And then let's see what we can pull off of item. So for here, we're going to go ahead and just, modify this. So we'll just say new item in feed. And then what we'll do here is for this description, we'll actually pass in item.data.message. Okay. And we'll go ahead and save that out. And then let's go ahead and run just another test, and we'll go ahead and just refresh our app, make sure everything's fresh in our client. And then we'll go ahead and trigger another test. All right, cool. And we see here, new item in feed, here is a new message. And that looks great. And so there are a couple of things that you could do here to obviously customize it. If we hop back out here and look at all of the data available to us, you can see that there's a ton of stuff. So you could obviously pull some of this data out and format it however you wanted to. So let's say, for example, we wanted to use this inserted at timestamp in our message. We could come back in here, new item in feed, we could say, let's go ahead and change this to a template literal from just a regular string. New item in feed. At, and then we'll say $, and then we can say date.toLocale string. I guess what we want to do, new date, and then we'll pass in item.inserted at. And then toLocale string, right? So this should format us a nice date. And we can go ahead and test that one more time. So let's go and refresh our app, close out our console, and then we can come back in here and trigger another test. And we should see that, okay, great. We have that date right there. And that's formatted just the way that we want it. And we can go ahead and actually close out that toast. Awesome. So that's fantastic. We've got a message displaying, and if we look at the way that we're populating our workflow run with data from our payload, you can see that we're actually extracting that message there. Kind of one thing to call out is that when our message template on our in-app step gets rendered, it gets rendered to HTML. So it's kind of difficult to display HTML in some of these Toast libraries. They typically want to accept strings. So that's why we passed in our message as that type of variable. So the last thing that we'll do is talk about how we could maybe also conditionally display some of these toasts, right? So now every time we get a real-time message, we're displaying a toast for that. But we could also, for example, add a show toast property to our message payload. And let's go ahead and set this to false. And so we'll come back into our code. And what we'll do here is we'll just sort of create an if statement, right? So if item.data.showToast, then we'll actually call this toast function. And if not, we won't show it. So it's a nice way that we can sort of from the front end of our application determine whether or not we want to show particular UI elements. So right now this is set to false. So if I go ahead and trigger this, We should see that, and cool. Up, we got to refresh our app real quick. So let's do that one more time. So we'll go run this test. And there we can see, hey, we've got this new message. It incremented, but we didn't get shown our toast. And so if we go ahead and flip this to true and run a test one more time, cool. We can see, all right, that worked the way that we expected, but this time we got shown our toast. So using the data payload on a workflow trigger is super helpful and allows you to do a lot of customization. So we could pass in just a ton of different properties here. So maybe there's a particular event type or something like that that you want to respond to, and you only want to show toasts in certain instances. Using these types of properties on your data payload is a great way to do that. Awesome. Thanks for watching. Real-time toasts are a pretty cool concept. And with Nock's Feed API, you can power all sorts of in-app UI like banners, modals, or cards if you wanted to. In this video, we covered the basic usage of the shadcn UI toast component, how to display the toast when the real-time feed receives a message, and then conditionally displaying the toast based on the contents of the feed message itself. If there are other real-time UI interactions you want to power with Nock, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching and Nock on.